John, I want to ask you this question. Last question as we look at this. Is there a dark horse out there? In your opinion, you say, it's not likely, but if the stars align in some different aspects, this could be a team that could come next November, or December, as we kind of saw A&M make that crazy run down the stretch with all the
Oh
kids
my
they landed
gosh.
in the last two signing days. Is there a team like that with how the season plays out and other factors could maybe be that dark horse that not a lot of people are talking about? Is there a program that you could see doing that, coming out of nowhere and saying, hey, we're going to make a run at this bad boy?
How about a team going to A&M here in a few weeks in the Miami Hurricanes? And I know you teed me up for that one, but when we talk about elite recruiting, what's ahead on the field and great position groups, Miami's kind of hitting all those marks from the potential department under Mario Cristobal, who's already known as a great recruiter. When you talk about great positional groups nationally, the very best ones, we talk about Ohio State's receiver group, Notre Dame's offensive line, maybe their receiver group, as well as it materializes. The Miami offensive line group is becoming a part of that conversation. And they, like Alabama, have paired it with a 2-quarterback class, including a top 10 overall recruit in sometimes polarizing Jaden Rashada. You've got your banner position or premium position players elsewhere as well, with Jaden Wayne as one of the edge rushers. You've got dynamic receivers in Robbie Washington and Nathaniel Joseph already committed. So can you hit the next level? They've got huge targets out there. They've got Okunlola still on the board. Monroe Freeling is still on the board for Miami offensively. They've got to hit wide receiver a little bit harder. Hakeem Williams is on the board for them. Jaylen Brown is an LSU commit that they're still communicating with. 2 SI99 recruits right there. If you could solidify that group and spur that into a little bit more success in the secondary, where, look, you're in South Florida. I mean, there is talent all around you. Damari Brown is one county north at American Heritage. There's a lot of Damon Fagan you're trying to flip from NC State, who's a teammate of his. There's a lot ahead for Miami from a secondary perspective as well. But like Texas and like some of these other schools, it's got to align on the field as well. You've got to go, same thing we said about Texas playing Bama, Notre Dame playing Ohio State. You got to go to Kyle Field, first-year head coach at this school, all that stuff considered. With you got an NFL quarterback and a lot of weapons, you got to contend and compete with the Aggies, who, let's be honest, every year I'm like, where's all this hype coming from? I know they just signed the number 1 class, but the on-field hype, still haven't named a quarterback. A lot of defensive attrition from that really great group we saw in 2021 that
Including their
upset
coordinator.
Alabama. And the coordinator on top of it, by the way. So I just think there's so much question mark surrounding that Texas A&M program that Miami's got a chance in this thing. They've got an explosive offense. They've got an NFL quarterback who's got weapons. They hit the portal hard as well as you would expect given the transition. They've got a chance to not only compete, but win that game in College Station. So again, you talk about a galvanizing moment. We know from the last, 40 years, it doesn't take much for Miami to feel like they're back. And it doesn't take much to sell that, given how fertile it is a grounds they recruit on. It feels a lot like Texas in this argument, to where, man, if that thing clicks, it could be the story of the entire college football season. And recruiting will, of course, reciprocate off of that. But the current group is clearly a top 10 group for the Canes. Again, maybe the best O-line class in the country, but there's still holes to fill. No running backs committed. They need more juice at receiver and in the secondary. But if it all
think about that, John. Think about what you just said. Where's Miami lacking in recruiting class right now? Perimeter.
And the skill position.
Perimeter.
That
may hold them back this year in the race for number 1, but that's going to set them up for the future, because that's where I think Miami's been lacking. And I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions about the U. When it was the U. Yes, they had the Michael Irvins and the Melvin Brattons in the 80s, and they had the Lamar Thomases and guys like that. And then in the 2000s, it was Reggie Wayne and Santana Moss, and it was Ed Reed. But Miami could always punch you in the mouth in the trenches.
And run the ball. Man.
Yes, and
Coming
on
downhill.
both sides of the ball, and that's what's been lacking from. I mean, they've had some really big time D linemen, but they're like edge rushers, finesse guys. Their O line has not been good in a long time, and their D line has not been as good as it should be when you look at the talent they've had. The fact that Mario Cristobal that's where he's loading up right now is sending a message. And we did a prediction show at Irish Breakdown recently. We actually predicted Miami to win the Coastal. If they win the Coastal and they beat one of A&M or Clemson on the road, or at least hang with both of those, and then handle their business at home, against Pitt, against Florida State, if Miami can be a 9-10 win team this year, that's how let's say LSU struggles a little bit under Brian Kelly with all the turnover they had. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, Jaylen Brown, look what we did. This is where you want to be, and do with him like you did with Nathaniel Joseph, flipping him from Clemson.
Right.
I think that's the thing that could make them. That's why they're the dark horse for me. They've established the trenches in this class now, because I think skill players I've always found are a little bit easier to flip.
They're more fluid, 100%. 100%.
And so if that's where you need to flip, and I think part of it is because linemen tend to make decisions, I think, based even more so on the position coach and that relationship and that bond. Like, you're not flipping an offensive lineman from Notre Dame, right? I mean, it's not with Harry Heastand here. It's just not going to happen. Right. But can you flip a receiver? Can you flip a corner, a DB? I think that's where Miami could get dangerous. If they can show promise, they don't have to win 11 games. Just show, hey, look, we're going to get this thing turned around. I think Miami could be a team that you don't want to have a committed kid that Miami wants if they win 9-10 games this year. If you're anyone not named Alabama, Georgia, and maybe that might be the end of the list right there, John.
And the one question we are still waiting to answer with Freeman and Sarkisian, that we know that answer in Miami. We know Cristobal can close. Right. He flipped a couple of recruits very late, days after he took the Miami job, and obviously is off to a great start in this class of 23. That part we know of. So I think that's where, again, when you put the on-field product together, that's where it becomes a legitimate high upside program where, this could be the premier team recruiting in the ACC above Clemson, which is something that obviously nobody's been able to do for the last 6-7 years.